So how to deal with such a problem? A car moves 11 kilometer north, 18 kilometer east, then 56 kilometer south. What is the displacement? Of course, he's asking about the total displacement of the car in kilometer. Forget about these now. Yeah. So let us just make a sketch. Draw it. But by the way, drawing or sketching the problem will help you too much. Look at that. So it has moved how much? 11 kilometer north. So just start like that. That's 11 north, then 18 kilometer east, then 56 south. So that would be the initial point, and that's the end point. I think it would be now easy to be imagined, right? This is 56, right? This is 56. How much is the displacement in this? This is the start point and that's the end point. We have a definition for the displacement. Displacement is the shortcut, it's the straightforward distance between the start and the end. So it should be this distance. But how can we get this distance? We can get it easily if we have this triangle. If we can use this triangle, it will be much easier to find that distance. That will be the hypotenuse. الوتر يا شباب. That's 18, right? This like that. That should be 18 and that should be also 11. So the rest, this distance بقى يا شباب اللي فاضل, this distance should be how much? حد يقول لي يا شباب, how much is that? That distance would be 45, that one. So how to get that distance, the hypotenuse الوتر? تقول لي لا. It's so simple. Pythagoras. It states that its displacement, let us call it delta, will be equaling to the root of this squared plus that squared. So it will be 18 squared plus 45 squared under the root, and then you can get easily the value. مش عارف يا كم يعني, but يعني we should have the value now. It's something like that. Remember, Shabab, we have to look carefully at what exactly we have here in the y direction, in the y-axis. Is it D or V? Here we have V. طيب, a car starts from a position of 4 meters east of the school. So this graph, Shabab, starts after the car moved 4 meters. So we have, afterward, we have to add this 4 meters. That means, Shabab, that means this is the school, for example, 4 meters, and we started recording the motion of this car from here. And that would be the recorded value of the motion after it moved 4 meters. So the question is, how much is the total distance or the position? What is the car's position relative to the school at 6 seconds? يبقى ما تنساش. You will get the position, then you have to add 4 meters because you have started from here. You didn't start from there. لا. This motion, this record, this data has been recorded after 4 meters. Once we get the distance here, we have to add 4 meters. But let us read. A car starts from the position 4 meters east of the school at a velocity of 20 meters per second east. That should be plus. And moves as shown in the following figure. What is the car's position relative to the school at time 6 seconds? We have many ways to solve such a problem. I will stick with the simplest one. But I will tell you also other ways to solve the same problem. Look at the Shabab. The weird thing here, we have something strange. Because what we have here already is velocity with time. We don't have distance. Yani if this graph is between distance and time, it will be straightforward. But unfortunately, as you can see, we don't have any distance. We have velocity. How can we get the distance from the velocity? But I will just say that use this equation. Distance, so D equal V times T. يا شباب, that would be wrong to use this equation in every single problem. That will be wrong. يا شباب, we can't use d equal vt إلا في حالة واحدة بس. If the object is moving with a constant velocity. طيب. I will make a small introduction. If you would like to find the distance could be v times t, and distance also could be, look at that, vi t, I have a problem, vi t plus half a t squared. This is also one of the equations that we can use to find the distance. We have another one. Look at that, Shabab. Yeah, I know you have dealt with that in the secondary school, so you have to know them. Yeah. The third one, Shabab, that contains the distance is v final squared equal v initial squared plus 2ad. We have three equations. We can use any one of them to get the distance. Of course, we can use any one of them depending on the information available in the problem. Shabab, we can't use this equation unless we know from the problem that the object is moving with a constant velocity. طيب. What if the object is not moving with a constant velocity? We can't use that. If the velocity is not constant, we have an acceleration. We can use this one, we can use that one, depending on what we have in the problem. I think the best way, because we need to ask about the position, the distance. The best way to use here, of course, d equal vt is not suitable in this problem because we have variable. It's not constant. So we can't use it. So we're gonna use one of the other two equations. I think the best one is v final squared equal v initial squared plus 2ad, where this is the final velocity, the initial velocity, the acceleration the car is moving with, and this is the distance that we are looking for. This is the distance that we are looking for. طب نبص كده يا شباب. Where is v final? طب بقول لك at 6 seconds, so we have to stop at that. So that would be our final point. This is the initial point and this is the final point. 6 seconds here. طيب. How much is the initial velocity? I would say the initial velocity would be 20. This is vi. And the final velocity would be, look at that, this is the final point. It will be v final, -4. And do we have the acceleration, Martian? To find d, of course, we have to have all the other things. Do we have a? مش directly, we don't have a directly, but we can guess it easily. We use to find a from the graph. This is between v and t, and the slope will be a. And this slope is so easy, look at that. A, the slope of this graph, take any 2 points. Let us take these 2 points. That should be 8 minus 12 divided by 3 minus 2. How much is that, Shabab? -4 meter per second squared. So we have everything in this equation. We can get easily d. We have v final, we can square it. V initial, we can square it. We have the a from the graph, so we can get d. هتعوض, you can substitute and you can get easily d. طيب. Now we have found d. It's after the calculation, it is 48 meter. Is that the final answer? Most of the students stopped at this point. By the way, one of the choices, one of the choices, عندك multiple choice, is 48. طبعا most of the students have choose this one, which is totally wrong. يا شباب, this is the distance the car traveled من 4 meter east. انما بقول لك
after 4 meters.
Yes, after 4 meters. طب احنا عايزين relative to the school. تقول لي how much is the distance for? يبقى we have to add the 48 to the 4 to get the total distance relative to the school. So we have to add the total distance equal مش عارف I have a problem here, plus 4, that will end up with 52 meter. This also شباب one of the most common problems about the average speed. A car moves east at a speed of 40 kilometers per hour for 3 hours. Then it turns south and travel at 100 kilometers for 2 hours. West and travel 3 hours at 64 kilometers. What is the average speed in kilometers per hour of the car for the whole interval? طبعا east, west, south, that will not make any difference for us because we are looking for the average speed. So everything will be calculated. We will not care, we will not care about the sign here. Sign is not important because we are looking for the average speed. So don't put negative or positive. It's just a speed. But what is the most common mistake, Shabab? What is the most common mistakes the students will do when they are solving this problem? We have the first velocity, the second velocity, and the third. خلاص. The average velocity, V average, or the average, whatever يعني السيمبل اللي هتاخدها. The average speed is S1 plus S2 plus S3 divided by 3. And that's it. This is totally wrong, Ishbel. This is totally wrong. We can't do that. We can't average the speed. Let us do it in the right way. Use the right equation. If you remember in the lecture, in the class, I asked you to use just one equation. قلت لك, whenever we hear about the average speed, تقول S bar average speed, give it in a symbol يعني, equal total distance over total time. And then you have to get the total distance and the total time. I don't think we have any problem with the total time. We have 3, we have 2, we have 3. So the total time, T total equal 8 hours. The problem, how to get the total distance or like that. So simple, Ishmael. We have 3 stages. This is the first one, the second one, and the third one. And we need to find D1, D2, and D3. Type. What equation we should use to find the distance? Again, Shabab, we have many equations. Shall we use D equal V times T? Here we can use it because we have a constant. As long as he didn't say that it's slow down, yeah. So that it should be constant. Okay? So we can use this one. So D1 will be equaling to 40 times T. It's yes, I'm sorry. It's the speed time, the time will give us the distance that should be in this case 40 times 3. How much is that, Shabab? 120 kilometers. The second distance in the second stage will be 100 times 2. That will be 200 kilometers. And the third will be 3 times 64. That will be 312. And how much is it, Shabab?
192.
Right?
192.
92. Then we will get the total. That will be 120 plus 200 plus 192. And we have the total time. Then the average speed will be equaling to the total distance over the total time. It's so simple, I know that, Shabab, but يعني we end up with many mistakes because again students like to make the simplest things. أسهل حاجة عندي يقول لك والله we have 3 velocities with 3 speeds. I will just get the average. This is wrong. To get the average speed again, you have to find the total distance and the total time. We have a car that is traveling at 20 meters per second north. Just put Shabab, when your problem is just a value, you say that it's plus, north is plus. On a level road, يعني it's just level, يعني it's flat. يعني the car will not be moving up or down, straight. The driver applies the brakes, okay, high farming, and the car, of course, should be slowing down, and it slows at 4 meters per second south. 4 meters per second squared. That would be the acceleration. South يعني should be negative. Oh, the velocity is positive, the acceleration is negative. Of course, from the last lecture, positive and negative, it should slow down. Okay. What is the stopping distance? يعني it will take, how much would be the stopping? يعني it will stop after how much distance? Again, شباب, what equation distance? He's asking about d. Just, it has to have something that should be light in your mind. To light distance, we have many equations for the distance. Should I use d equal v times t? No. D equal v times t is not suitable here because it's only for an object that moves with a constant velocity. And of course, we don't have any constant. We have an acceleration. يعني. But we can't use this. Shall I use d equal vi t plus half a t squared? We could. If we have the time, we have the initial speed, and we have the acceleration. Or v final squared equal v initial squared plus 2ad. Whichever is simple for us, we can use. I think we can't use, or at least it will be very difficult. يعني it will be multiple step عشان الأول to find the time and then to substitute here. طب وليه? We can use this one. Depending how much, if we understand that stopping. What does it mean stopping? Stopping means v final equals 0. So we have v final, it equals 0. We have v initial, it equals 20 meters per second. This is the initial. Of course, شباب, don't forget to square each one of them. And we have the acceleration, and don't forget to put the negative sign. مش هقول لك put a negative, but I told you that it's to the south. That should be, in this case, negative. So let us apply that to the equation. So we have 0 squared equal v initial squared, that should be 400, 20 squared is 400, plus 2 times negative 4 times the distance. So we have here 400 minus 8d equals 0. Let us put d into the other side, it will be plus. So 8d equal 400, and d will be equaling 400 over 8. How much is it, شباب?
50.
50, I guess.
Yes, 50 meters. We have this cheetah. خلاص. This animal, the fastest animal on the earth, yeah, can maintain its maximum speed at 100 km per hour for 30 seconds. خلاص. يبقى it will move with 100 km for just 30 seconds. Okay. What minimum distance? Yeah, he's asked about d. Must a gazelle? Of course, the cheetah now is chasing the gazelle. The minimum distance the gazelle should have ahead of the cheetah, يعني, and the gazelle is moving, of course, a little bit slower than the cheetah, is 80 km to be ahead of the cheetah to escape. يعني ايه هي اقل مسافه؟ the minimum distance المفروض الشيتا تكون عندها، يعني if this is the cheetah and that should be the gazelle, how much is that distance؟ اللي لو الشيتا شباب, if the cheetah is running with 100 and the gazelle will start running with 80, ممكن تهرب. طبعا of course that should be in 30 seconds يعني. طب نحل المسألة دي ازاي؟ We can solve this problem in many different ways. I will choose one of them, and you will find that yes, it looks easy. يعني. First, I will calculate the distance traveled by the cheetah in 30 seconds. D of the cheetah in 30 seconds. How much is it? It's 100. ينفع طبعا distance, and the distance, of course, distance, I will use this one, V times T. V times T. Can I use the شباب 100 km with 30 seconds? That's, of course,
yeah.
We have to convert, right? So we have to convert to 100 km per hour into meter per second. ازاي؟ we have to multiply that by 1000 divided by 3600. that will turn the 100 kilometer per hour into meter per second. ما تنسوش. all of this is the velocity or the speed يعني times 30 seconds. So this is the distance the cheetah will travel in 30 seconds. How much is it? أي حاجة. Let us call it as 800 مثلا يعني 800 meter. Then let us calculate the distance traveled by the gazelle in the same interval of time in 30 seconds برضه. That should be 80 برضه times 1000 3600 times 30. I think of course the distance traveled by the gazelle would be a little bit less than 800. خلينا نقول مثلا يعني 600. We can calculate it بس يعني we don't have time to calculate it يعني. بس should be less يعني. نرجع تاني شباب. What the problem is all about. يقول لك how or what minimum distance must the gazelle that is running at 80 kilometer to be ahead of the cheetah to escape. أقول له this distance would be this minus that. The distance the gazelle should be at the beginning. لما الشيتا كانت هنا and the gazelle كان هنا يا شباب. This distance should be minimum would be 200. علشان لما الشيتا تجري والجزل تجري ما تلحقهاش. Did you get that يا شباب؟ هي a little bit more fine but it needs a little bit more understanding يعني. If you understand it you can solve it easily. As you can see we will just use this equation. We will solve it in another way. How much is the relative speed between V of the cheetah and the gazelle? The relative speed of the cheetah and the gazelle. شباب, remember they are moving in the same direction. This is the cheetah and this is the gazelle. If they are moving in the same direction, I should subtract or add. Subtract or add. Subtract. The relative velocity between them is 100 minus 80. That should be 20 kilometers per hour. The relative speed in between, or the relative velocity in between. But that should be 20 times 1000 divided by 360 per second. But what shall we do with this relative velocity? Oh, look at that. We have the relative velocity in between now, and we have the time. يا شباب, if we just multiply the time, or 30 seconds, by the relative velocity in between, مش ده يديني المينيمم distance اللي المفروض تكون ما بينهم for the gazelle to escape. Look at that. Of course, it should be the same. This is the first way that we have used. A distance traveled by the cheetah. Distance traveled by the cheetah in 30 seconds. Distance traveled by the gazelle. It was 83.3. اللي هي values, the exact values. 666. Then when we have subtracted them, the distance would be 160. This distance is the distance that the gazelle should have to be able to at the beginning, between it and the cheetah to be able to escape after running. And we will use it, or we will solve it in another way. قلنا هنجيب relative velocity. The relative velocity will be 20 kilometer, and 20 kilometer will be 5.6 meter per second. حولناها يعني. And when we multiply this by the time we are 30, we get the same 1.66.6, يعني almost 167 meter. يعني we have different ways to solve the same problem if we can understand what does it mean. هي البروبلم مش المسألة مشكلتها كان احنا فاهمينها ولا لا. يعني ايه المينيمم distance between them؟ هو عايز يقول ايه؟ Now we will turn to the point that we have already discussed in the last lecture. The last point in the last lecture. Okay, يا شباب? If we have two balls, I will remind you with, if we have two balls, 1 and 2, and they will be fired, they will move at the same time, but 2 will fall down directly and 1 will just make a curve. احنا قلنا ان T1 and T2 are equal. The time for this and that to hit the ground is the same. خلاص شباب, ليه؟ because the vertical speed Vy here and Vy there is the same because they are being accelerated by Fg, and Fg will just accelerate both of them with the same rate اللي هي 9.8. خلاص كده يا شباب؟ خلاص كده. So they will hit the ground at the same time. Can we use this simple argument to solve problems? Yes, look at that. We have a bullet is fired horizontally from a rifle at 200 meters per second from a cliff. مرتفع, above a blind blow here. This is the problem. This is the cliff, and this is the ground. It has been fired from here. This is the bullet. Of course, the bullet will take this path. But the initial speed in the x, remember, this is in the x direction, 200 meters per second. ما تقوليش بقى in the y, لا, لأنه هو قال لي فين يا شباب؟ Look at that, from the above, up, horizontally. هو fired horizontally, so that would be the initial speed in the x direction. حلو قوي. The bullet reached the plane, اللي هو الجراوند يعني, after 5 seconds, so it will take 5 seconds to hit the ground. امال هو عايز ايه؟ How high was the cliff? ايه؟ How high was the cliff? طب ايه علاقة ده بده؟ هنا يا شباب this type of problem that you will need 2 equations, 2 things to be able to solve it. But you know all of them. All what you need is to gather them together. I will teach you, but الأول we have to understand the problem because we have many problems similar to this exactly. Look at that شباب. Remember. الكونسبت هنا ايه؟ خلينا نحل مسألة. Please concentrate with me. This pole will take 5 seconds to hit the ground if it moves in the path. And also it will take the same time if it just fall down like that. صح يا شباب؟ صح ولا ايه؟
Yes.
هو ده حل المسألة. So the problem will be solved by this way. يعني this صحيح ان الفire it is already fired in that spot. It's moving here. But الفيزيكس بتقول لنا if this bullet will be left to fall down vertically like that, it will take the same 5 seconds to hit the ground. احنا شفنا الحكايه دي. طبعا of course شباب هنا assuming that there is no resistance. طبعا of course يعني there is no resistance. كويس. He's asked about h, the height, this distance, this height. How to get it? I understand. D equal VI T plus half AT squared. If you would like to find D أو H, let's say يعني مش مهم تسميها إيه. It doesn't matter how to call it يعني. المهم that's that distance يعني, that's height. We need to find V initial, the time it will take to hit the ground, and the acceleration. But شباب, be careful here. What VI and what A يعني إيه؟ يا شباب, we have a 2-dimensional motion now. It's not 1-dimensional. Look at that. We have Vx and we have Vy. So when we talk about Vi, is it for Vx or Vy? نقصد مين فيهم؟ شباب, we are talking about the height. The height. يبقى we are meaning the y direction. طب يا ترى Vi يا شباب, ال V initial in the y direction, how much is it? Vi in the y direction, how much is it?
0.
Vi in the x direction is 200. Vi initial in the x direction هي دي. And it will not be changed. It will be the same all the way through. هتفهم الحكايه دي. Because there is no resistance. So Vx will be the same على طول. هنا كمان it will be 200. ال Vy is the one that is changing. طب at the beginning Vy كانت بتساوي كام؟ حد يقول لي يا شباب؟ Vy كانت بتساوي at the beginning
0.
0 صح؟ لأنه ما قاليش. When you throw something horizontally, of course, the y component at the beginning at t equals 0 should be 0. يبقى Vi الحمد لله, one of the terms has been deleted. Look at that. That is 0. طيب. We have t. It's 5 seconds. We need to find A. What is the acceleration? Like that. It's so easy. The acceleration of the ball, if it is left to fall downward, no. Vy is affected by the gravity, so it's affected by A equal G 9.8. So d at the end of the day will be half times 9.8 times t squared layer 5 squared, and that's a problem. يا شباب understood?
Excuse me,
Yes.
repeat
Yes.
the cancellation for VI.
Excuse me, was that Azam?
Yes.
Azam asked why I've just canceled this term. I canceled this term because of VI. Which VI is it? And عندي two V's, عندي VX and VY. And each one of them will be having VIX and VIY. يا ترى اللي في القانون of D, is it VIX or VIY? أقول لك دي VIY ليه؟ Because I'm talking about that direction. The height. هو الهايت ده شباب، الهايت belongs to X or to Y؟ ها؟ I like to ask questions to make things easy. To Y صح كده؟ يبقى of course هنا VI it's VIY. طيب how much is VIY؟ يعني the initial speed of this ball in the Y direction. السؤال العزام.
Oh, he was standing still there, right? Then
in the Y, لا, in the Y direction at the beginning, in the Y direction, the velocity was zero, the speed was zero, because we have just in the X. يعني when you, يا شباب, when we throw something in the X with speed 5 meters per second, how much is VIX? 5 meters per second. Oh, per second. How much is VIY? يعني the initial speed in the Y. يا اخوانا it's zero. ليه؟ I push it in the X, there is no Y. So that it will increase. يعني VIY كانت زيرو في الأول، إنما بعد كده it will be increasing by the gravity. So each second it will gain 9.8. إنما أنا بتكلم at the beginning. So as long as it's zero now, this term will be cancelled. A is G in this problem because we are talking about something is falling down by the gravity. So A equal G. That's it. This is almost the same one. Okay, شباب? But now he's asking what is the speed it strike the level ground at the base of the cliff. يعني he's asking about the speed here when the ball is يعني just before it hit the ground. How much is the speed? We have a ball that moves horizontal. It has been pushed horizontally by 30 meters per second. Now he's given us the height. It's 80. Okay. طبعا of course after some time it will hit the ground. هو بيقول لي with what speed, how much is the speed it will hit the ground here. How to solve this problem? الحقيقة في هنا يا شباب نقطة مهمة جدا. The speed it will hit the ground مش ال Vx ومش ال Vy. It's V. Because this ball, as we said many times, the ball that will take this path اللي هي البروجكتايل دايما عنده two components، عنده ركبتين Vx constant and Vy variable. لو ساعتك عايز تجيب ال V بقى السبيد، if I ask you about the speed of the ball at any position ما تقوليش Vx وما تقوليش Vy because they are the component. طب ازاي اجيب ال V؟ To find the V you have to get this vector اللي هو من فيثاغورس يا شباب V equal the root of Vx squared plus Vy squared. So to find V at any position ما يهمنيش بقى فين، هو عايزها هنا any position يعني. If you would like to find V, the velocity or the speed of the ball, بس بقول لك السبيد بس، ما بقولكش ال Vy ولا ال Vx. V أو the speed of the ball, V equal this squared plus this squared under the root. Vectors. طيب, how much is it here, شباب? Vx will be the same. Vx initial Vx 30 meters per second. The velocity in the x direction initial, and it will be at any time 30 meters per second. احنا قلنا يا شباب الكلام ده because the velocity or the speed in the x direction is not changing. There is no resistance. What will it change is Vy. Vy is it changing type. That would be 30 meters per second. So how much is Vy? Our problem is to find Vy, and then we will get V from this simple equation, Vx squared plus Vy squared under the root. The answer is so simple. To get Vy شباب, we have Vi y again is 0. The initial speed in the y direction at the beginning is 0. And then it will start to increase until it reaches this point. V final squared in the y direction يعني V final Vy final squared بيساوي V initial y squared plus 2AD. We are looking for Vy final هي دي يا شباب. Fine, at the end of the journey يعني. That is 0 again. The initial Vi in the direction y is 0 because the ball is just being thrown in the x direction. يبقى at the beginning كان ال Vy بيساوي 0. There is no component in the y. Then it will increase. So to find this one, we need to find the acceleration and the distance. The distance here is 80. In the y direction is 80. And the acceleration again is the acceleration of gravity. The object is moving يا شباب under its weight. There is no resistance. يبقى هنا أو هنا أو if it's just move downward directly كل ده in the y direction the ball will be affected by the gravity A equal G. So here that will be 9.8. Then just calculate, then get the root of Vy squared. You will get Vy. Then we have Vx equal 30. Vy at that point equal, how much is it? 39.6. عشان تجيب ال V, it's equaling to Vx squared plus Vy squared. Just square this and square that, then get the root.